What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato holding it down at the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. And guys, did you just hear that sound? That, my friends, is the sound of opportunity knocking in Dallas and the slow sinking feeling of dread creeping in the back door of every Boston Celtic fan household. Claudia, how you doing this morning, bud?
Okay, Gojo, let's not go that far. I think we'll be okay. But we'll see. If we have to give one away, that's quite all right. Because, yes, Game 3 is in Dallas. They got to crawl out of an 0-2 deficit. Rachel Nichols will join us to talk about it all in Hour 2. There's some hot dog drama. Yes, you heard that right. Number 4 ranked eater Nick Wehry will join us to talk about shocking news coming out of the competition world of eating. Eating competition? How do you even say that? World eating competition? Yeah. Major League Eating. Yes, it's very,
which is
it's
a
sport.
legitimate, bona fide sport full of athletes that I have covered up close and personal, and this drama hit the Golic household in a very real way today.
Oh, well, I can't wait to talk about that. And then another sport, football. We're going to talk about the Bills. Eric Wood will join us to talk about reports of some worrying injuries in the wide receiver room. But first, speaking of injury, Kristaps Porzingis suffered what the team is calling a rare injury to his left leg. Now, this is separate from his right calf injury that kept him out of the prior series. He is considered day-to-day. Here's what KP and head coach Joe Mazzulla had to say about his status heading into Game 3.
That's something I leave in the medical staff's hands to determine whether, I can go or no. But from my side, as I said, there's nothing's going to stop me unless, I'm told not to or not allowed to play. So that's the only reason I will not be out there.
He's doing anything and everything he can to be ready for the game tomorrow. It's a serious injury, and at the end of the day, our team and the medical team is not going to put him in any bad situations. And so we've taken a decision to play out of his hands because the importance of him. And so he's going to do everything he can to play, and then we're going to leave it up to our medical team. And that's really it.
And GoJo, they took the decision out of his hands after he said he'll die if he has to go out in the court. They're like, okay, I think we will take over the medical advice here. And I'll leave it to you guys to talk about what this actual injury is, because it's hard to pronounce. But he's officially listed as questionable for tonight. I'm curious, GoJo, how likely is it that the Mavs can cover? Because they're the 2.5-point favorite here if Porzingis is a no-show.
Well, I want to try and have us all make an effort to pronounce this, because part of the shock yesterday was the fact that Shams, who reported this news, tweeted out the rare injury, and he decided to go full med school on this. I don't realize when Sham had his stint in medical school, what school he went to. Maybe he knows my brother-in-law, but either way, this was yesterday. Dad, do you want to give this a try first? Do you have the Shams tweet up in front of you right now? And can you try and read? My dad, who for years has been described as an amateur doctor, he had so many surgeries and injuries as an NFL player that he generally tends to skew on the right side of all this stuff. So I want to let him go first and see if he can wow us.
Yeah, he suffered a torn medial reticellum, allowing dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon in his left leg. That was the injury. I have no idea what it is. Obviously, there's tendon in there, so there's a tendon. It's a tendon and the ankle. So how was that? That sound pretty good? If nothing else, you just say it with conviction.
That was very good.
It's like anything else. You just got to go fast through it. It's like them spelling bee words that come up at scripts every year. The torn medial reticellum, allowing the dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon. Yeah, it's actually not that hard when you say it out like that. Now, all of us were out here faking the funk yesterday online. Claudia, do you want to round it out?
No, I feel like I don't have to. You guys just did so well. No, okay. Wow. Torn medial reticulum.
Wow.
Okay, chill with the honking. Whatever.
Boy, they got
great.
quick on that one, didn't they? Listen, the bottom line to this thing is what there's a couple of doctors I was reading about say you don't see this injury a lot, but it can be taped in a certain way to play. Now, like anything else, when you read about an injury, it's the severity, it's the grade of it, of how bad is it. And to the worry of the Boston Celtics fans, which Claudia is not falling into, and I don't blame her, this team fares pretty well without him. 30-5 without him, 9-1 in the playoffs without him. So they're doing okay without him. You'd rather have him. You're better with him on the team. But this is one of those cases where they just leave it up to the doctor. We're past the time of asking a player, or you'll ask a player if they want to go and give it a shot. Some stick a needle in it, see Luka, to go out there and play. But the main thing is can you hurt it more? That's always the biggest question. Can you hurt it, re-injure it or hurt it more, whether you're going to numb it with a needle, tape it a certain way, whatever. These are the finals. I think for the most part, any athlete would want to play. It's just a matter of, is it better to just sit for the one game because you have more games? This game isn't ending the series.
No, but I guess that's the key, is how much better can it get in how much time within the body of the finals? Because while Boston has been fine without Kristaps, we understand this is their toughest test in terms of how complete the roster they're facing is on the other side versus prior rounds. You look at Boston so far in the finals, this is according to Tim Bontemps at ESPN, Boston is plus 25 in the 44 minutes that Porzingis has played in this series and dead even in the 52 minutes that he hasn't played so far. And in a game two where we saw this team in Dallas pull a lot closer, play them a lot tighter, especially defensively, and that lob has been something that's been an early weapon taken away from them when Kristaps is on the court. Dad, this does, I wonder, have to rattle the cage a little bit for Boston fans, more so in the, here we go again. Like, we thought we were back, we thought it was finally going to be this clean run, and now it's something else popping up again. And if Dallas does win game three, which they're very capable of, Claudia mentioned they're a home favorite in this game, and with Kristaps, if Kristaps ends up being out or hobbled in this game, it does, we've seen, change the complexity and the math with him on the court. So I absolutely think this could change the series. And if Dallas gets a little bit of hope and belief back in on their home court for some of these role players, all of a sudden we got an issue. But Dad, to your original point, if you're Kristaps Porzingis, how hard are you pushing this? This is the NBA Finals. You've worked to get here your whole career. Injury has marred you in particular, more so than probably anyone else we're talking about in this series. And this idea of being this close to the crown, I know for sure you and probably I and a lot of other people you're going to do whatever it takes to get back out there on the court. And if you go down swinging, Kristaps put it with a lot more gravity, saying I die out there. But that's basically what it's like in terms of, yeah, if I've got this opportunity that I don't know if I'm going to get again, I'm going to sell out everything, even if it potentially means going down with a more serious injury.
You know, you're asking a player, an athlete, to be, you know, kind of even keeled about this. Okay, it's game 3. All they can do is win one game. We'd still be up 2-1. But that goes out the window, man. You want to play. Players want to play. You know, whether, like I said, whether you take a pill, whether you stick a needle in something, or whether you tape something a certain way, if you feel like you're going to play, you want to play. That's why you really should. And we talk about this in football all the time with the line, take the helmet away from the player. You got to put it on the doctor. That's why it takes the responsibility off the coach as well. And you just say, this is a doctor's decision. And the doctor, supposedly it goes along the lines of, doctors say, hey, you're good to go. You know, and then now it's on the player. Okay, then the coach asks the player, hey, doc says you're good to go. You're good to go. You're feeling good to go? Because as I've talked about for years, there can be a mental side to this, and everybody is different on how they treat injuries. Like I said, for the most part, I think people want to play. So that's the route it goes right now. There was a time, and maybe there's still some of that, depending on the player. The player will win out if they want to play. Even if the doctors are kind of hemming and hawing and a player really wants to go, depending on the power of the player, they can get on the court, the field, the ice, whatever. There are many people at this point, everybody who's playing in the postseason in any sport is not 100%. It's just a matter of what you can deal with. And the biggest thing that the doctors are always concerned about is, can you damage it further? Which would lead to more time off. You go in, you sting it a little bit tonight. Does that put you out for a few more games? But Mike, your point is probably the best one in a series sport is, okay, what's the difference if he plays tonight, the time he has for the next game of recovery? If there's going to be no real effect, then go out there and play. If you're not sure, then you may have to sit him and say, let's give this thing a couple of more days, including this game day, not play him, and let him get a little more rehab in, because we think the benefit will be much better in a couple of days.
Mazzulla was pretty vocal, too, on his mindset for it, and he was looking towards the future to next season. He's saying the last thing we want is not even injury he has to deal with in the postseason, but something that might pop up again next season. I want to talk about another injury that we sort of forgot about, and that's Luka. He's not 100%, and you might not believe that because he's dropping 30-point triple-doubles, but he talked about the fact that he doesn't feel great. They had to inject him with those painkillers. So I'm curious, Senior, you said you dealt with a lot of injuries when you were playing. Just how long? Because if I'm looking at this game, and of course I'm thinking about ways to bet it, you know, do I bet Dallas in the first half maybe instead of the full game? Is that pain injection going to wear off as I would assume it does, or does it keep going? Well, do they re-inject him during the game? Like, what do you think of Luka's injury? Because he was dealing with the chest, lower as well, so he's not technically 100% either.
So nobody's 100%. Technically, 0 people that are playing now are 100%. It's just a matter of what the degree is of your injury. And can you inject someone during a game? Yeah, I mean, there was a year I got my cartilage torn early on, and I got injected before the game, then again at halftime. So yeah, you can do that. It's a matter of if you want to do that, if it's beneficial to do that. Because you have to understand, when you inject something, you're masking it now, and sometimes you aren't going to know if you hurt it anymore. And God knows you better be ready when the pain injection wears off after the game and how you're going to feel. But that's all stuff doctors deal with and you deal with, especially with a shot, is you don't know if you're hurting it anymore because you've numbed it up. But many players are going to do it, not even think about the consequences because of what's on the line.
Yeah, to Claudia's point, though, I absolutely think it skews in favor of hot starts, because if you go out there and all of a sudden it is starting to wear off around halftime or later in the game, and you take one bad shot, and God, we've seen it. This whole series has been an exercise in gait study. Everyone watching Kristaps gait the other night when he popped his calf there, and you heard Doris Burke talking about it on the broadcast. We've watched Luka run. I mean, listen, as someone that's had plenty of disc issues in their lower back, I can recognize the hurt back run, and you see Luka out there with that little truffle shuffle through there all the time late on in these games. Once he lands on the floor hard, takes a tough shot, that's why you're going to see Boston continue to be physical with him when he gets into the paint, because that's what you're hoping for on the other side. Like, hey, listen, basketball is a physical sport, and if we knock him loose a little bit and all of a sudden he's a little bit more ginger getting up, that's in our favor. And so it puts a ton of pressure. And that's why still for Boston on the Luka front, most of your defensive approach to him hasn't changed. Now what changes potentially with Kristaps out, though, and if you're putting Al Horford in, who's still been good for you in this final series, but we've seen when he gets above 30, 35 minutes in the postseason, Al Horford starts to look like a guy who's been in the league almost 2 decades. And that's your concern if you're Boston, is you've managed to take these games and blow them out at the end. And we know Boston in the regular series, their main issue was clutch time numbers, and what was Dallas's biggest strength in the regular season and the postseason. Hey, if we can keep it close to the final 5 minutes, we're counting on these guys to go off. And for players not named Luka, who have been 5 for 32 from 3, Dad, I'd have to imagine that's the biggest thing that changes when Dallas go home. But I think that starts with them going and establishing the inside presence with Lively, with Gafford, and attacking that early and often. If now all of a sudden you've only got Al Horford there as your mainstay of guys that have played meaningful minutes there, with Kristaps out, who's been one of the best rim protectors in the NBA.
Yeah, and if Al's going to play way more minutes than normal, you either say, okay, Al, give it to us another time if you can at 38 years old, or you have to switch your rotation and maybe go to a smaller lineup, which would further give Dallas an advantage on the inside around the rim, which we've seen, the first 3 rounds, 54 alley-oops. They haven't even gotten close to that as far as ratio in the finals because of Porzingis. So, yeah, it's a huge shift on what will happen on that side by the rim. And you said it about Luka, man. When you see a guy that, as I said, nobody's 100%, but there's degrees. And Luka's hurting a lot. And you know what? There's no mercy out there. You go after it. That's what I always said. If the old lineman had a wrapped elbow, I was hitting that elbow. That's why you try not to wrap things too much, because they become targets. And you know what? Anybody who's like, oh, that's not tough, that's just the way it works. And you know what else Boston is doing? You see, we talk about Dallas and their defense. They're going right at Luka. Right? They are dribbling right around him, because he just, and that's a tough ask. You need him offensively so much to score and assist that now to ask him defensively, I mean, you better have that help defense ready to go, because they're just going straight at and around him.
Well, you also better have Kyrie Irving ready to go offensively to take some of the load off. And Kyrie talked about addressing that specifically yesterday with Luka Doncic.
Yeah, well, it started with me just telling my hermano, I got to play better for him, alongside him. And, in order for us to, accomplish our goal, we both have to be playing well, and we both have to be doing the little things and doing whatever it takes to win. So easy conversation, but it started with me reaching out, just letting him know that, it's my fault, taking accountability for not playing particularly well. But also I got to continue to trust my guys around us, or around me, and, have fun in the process. We've gotten this far because we've been a great team, not because we've just put it on me and Luka.
This really seems like the South Park I broke the dam situation. And to be clear, this is a good thing, because Luka Doncic came out and immediately took accountability. And Dad, in every locker room, the minute your best player, your head coach, the reason accountability is so important is because it trickles down. It's pervasive. When other players on the team see the best player saying, I need to do more, it reminds them that, all right, if that guy feels that way, I got no place to hide. I got nothing to do here. Now, does Kyrie Irving do it with the energy of a guy who definitely pulls out a guitar at parties like, oh, look, I found this thing? 100%. But Dad, what kind of game are you expecting from Kyrie Irving tonight? I'm trying to look up his point total for this game right now. Claudia, if you have a read on that, let me know. But I would imagine Kyrie Irving, here we go, player points for this game. Kyrie Irving, the over-under set at 23.5. Dad, I mean, if Dallas is going to win this game, this has to be the overnight for Kyrie finally, right?
So one of the reasons I think it'll be over is I think, especially early on, we talk about Luka being strong early on. I think Luka's going to let his teammates start to roll a little bit early as well. And I think it would behoove him to let them try and get their groove on, because he can't just do it alone. So that is PJ. We saw PJ Washington, hit his first 3, and the way Dallas came out in that game 2 in Boston, they were looking like, okay, they're hitting them. Boston isn't hitting them. That's why it's probably even more damning for Dallas, as Boston did not have a great shooting game and still ended up winning. But Dallas was right there. albeit for a blocked layup that would have made it a 3-point game with 50 seconds to go. So I actually think Luka, while we don't see it a lot because the dude hangs onto the ball and he's going to try and score, I think it would behoove to get the teammates and let the teammates, i.e. especially Kyrie Irving, get involved early in this game.
If you watch the tape, though, on how they're defending him, they're playing him really close. Like Derek White, even when Tatum was on him, whoever was defending him was not letting him shoot, wasn't giving him the room. So he was almost forced to drive to the basket. You would think if Porzingis doesn't play, he's going to do that even more so. So one prop I actually looked at and I do like is under 2.5 threes for Kyrie. That doesn't mean he won't go over his points prop, but I'm looking now, this line has already moved about 20 cents in my favor, so they've seen some under money. But I think that's what's going to work for Kyrie because they're just not giving him the room on that three, GoJo.
100%. They've been, playing out very much on the perimeter. And part of that, again, goes back to, and this is why the Kristaps element is so important, because when you feel supported back there, Boston, we've heard talked about all year, never been a team that's going to blitz and double team a lot of guys. They have so many capable defenders, but all of a sudden, if your rim check goes and opts out, everything changes. And Kyrie Irving, one of the best finishers in the NBA, who we've seen stymied by some of those bigger bodies guarding him, stymied by Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday and Derek White, who's one of the best blocking guards in the NBA, Dad.
So that's the offensive side we're talking about, Dallas, right? And again, they were right there with Boston at the end of the game. What are we going to see any change in now? Boston missed their share of them, but their ability to whip the ball around and have an open three is just amazing to watch. You know, as your coach, Mike, in lacrosse in Little League in grade school, Bobby Olson used to say, pass the ball. The ball moves faster than any defender can move. And you see that with this Boston offense, right? Passing the ball around, it can move faster than any defender, and you end up with a Celtic with a wide open three.
Basketball dad energy has arrived to the NBA Finals. Two-hand passes around the perimeter. The ball's always going to move faster. We'll get to plenty more of the Finals preview with Rachel Nichols, who's going to join us in the second hour. But coming up next, breaking news that has rocked the world of Major League eating here on GoJo and Golic.
back here on GoJo and Golic with a shake-up in the Major League Eating world. Joey Chestnut, yes, the one and only, is not going to be able to eat at the 4th of July event, which he always does and continuously wins. He's won it 16 times at Nathan's event, including every year since 2016. This is a statement from the Major League Eating. Joey Chestnut, an American hero. We would love nothing more than to have him at the Nathan's famous international hot dog eating contest. We hope he returns when he is not representing a rival brand. Joey responded on X saying he found out through media and he does not have a contract with Major League Eating or Nathan's. A lot to unpack here, so we welcome in our next guest, world number 4 competitive eater, Nick Wehry. Nick, you told us off camera that you've had a busy day. How are you feeling right now?
As a friend, I feel sad. As a competitor, I don't know if I'm too torn up about it. But, it is something.
I was going to say, what was your reaction when you first heard the news yesterday when this bombshell went off in the sport?
So I tried to get away from my phone because it's never vibrated that much in my life. But with that said, it was it's a lot. I imagine it would be like, Junior, if you knew you had to go up against Aaron Donald, the friend in you is going to be like, oh, man, I don't want him to be out of here. But the competitor in you is going to be like, maybe Sunday's going to be easier, So Joey's a very, very good friend. So I'm upset that he's not going to be there. And you never want to win a title, so to speak, with an asterisk. But with that said, it's still going to be a great event. I'm still looking forward to the 4th. And that's all I can do is prep for the 4th of July.
I remember when people would ask me, does a win feel the same if the other team doesn't have their best player? And I said, hell yeah, I don't care. I mean, if I'm playing the Super Bowl and the other team's best player isn't there and we win the Super Bowl, I'm still spouting that ring. So I have no problem with that. All right. So it's very tough to just believe one side or the other side when they make their statements. And this is now getting into a contractual area I have no idea about. So anything you can shed light on as far as what are contractual obligations for eaters in this contest as far as other brands and other advertisements and things like that, if there is any?
So we all kind of have somewhat different contracts. We negotiate those independently, so I can't speak to the details of Joey's contract. When Joey says he doesn't have an agreement with Nathan Smithfield and MLE, I believe what he means by that is he doesn't have an agreement right now, because you don't compete at the 4th of July without an agreement. So when people are saying like, oh, he doesn't have an agreement, he can do what he wants, like once it's signed, kind of. And so like the language of contracts, as both of you guys know, is not as simple as like, when you were with the Eagles or Mike, when you did your preseason stuff with the Steelers, it wasn't like a crayon and a piece of paper, like we're going to pay you this, play football. There's a lot that goes into it. So I don't know what the verbiage is with Impossible Foods. I don't know what the verbiage is with Major League Eating Nathan Smithfield. But I think there's a lot logistically that we won't know. That's a lot more fun for places like the New York Post just to sensationalize and just say it's easy as bad. End of story.
Yeah, certainly we know there's always more to that, and the devil is in the details on this. But how much does something like this come up in the world of Major League Eating, where you've had a sponsor that would come in and try and represent you, or another eater, and it's conflicted with something in Major League Eating? And is there a process or a pattern that's been used in the past to work through these kind of issues before?
So generally speaking, if you get an offer from something, whether it's to make an appearance or do maybe a commercial or a video or what have you, some of them you can do because there's no butting of heads. Some of them, if you think it's iffy, you got to kind of run it by and see like, is there a conflict of interest here? And that's just, I know like my contracts and obviously some of the details of Mickey's. I can't speak to Joey's. I imagine if you looked at Aaron Rodgers' contract as opposed to the rest of the New York Jets, there's probably some differences in there, as opposed to what he can get away with and do. So I don't want to overstep, but with that said, there's been things that understandably I've had to turn down, whether it was because it's going to shed a bad light on Major League Eating or competitive eating, or because there's a conflict of interest. And I understand that because, Wilson, I believe, is the official football of the NFL. So like, he probably can't be parading around, like, look at my Spalding footballs and things like that. Like, I don't know, but a league, even whether it's Major League Eating, the NFL, the NBA, whatever, they do have to take their best interest into account, just like Joey does. Joey's a man. He's got bills to pay. He's got mouths to feed. So I understand that. And as a friend, I would love to see him at the table because I'd rather take the title from him than take it when he's not there. But I'm hoping both sides can work everything out. But if they don't, it's still going to be a great day.
Is that something? I guess that's where I was going, because I think everybody would like to see him there for the most part. I get it by still winning if he's not there, but to see him there and what this day means. So do you think, or your opinion on, is it going to take both sides to give a little on this, or do you think one side is just going to have to kind of cave?
I think it's probably both. I think that's the way with most disagreements. I don't think it's ever just like, it is sometimes, of course, somebody's just like sitting there, like when my 9-year-old daughter is disagreeing with me. Generally, I'd like to say it's her fault, not both of ours. But I think this one is probably both sides may have to give a little bit. And with the uproar that's happened, maybe they'll be willing to do that, or maybe they're not. Maybe 2024 is a year where there's a hiatus and it comes back in 2025. Maybe there's some John Cena Royal Rumble comeback on the 4th of July, and 15 of us dudes aren't super psyched when his music hits. But who knows? As far as I know, it's not a work, and it's all very legit.
So with that in mind, the 4th of July, we're inside a month from that now. You and others are getting prepared for this. And listen, Major League Eating has seen stars have disagreement with the sport and leave. Obviously, Kobayashi was the face of competitive eating for a long time before Joey came up, and then no longer with the sport. And now Joey potentially in that same position. Outside of yourself, we know your wife on the women's side has been a dominant force there for a long time. But amongst your name, who are the other competitors who have an opportunity and who are going to be your main competition going into the 4th if Joey's not out there?
So I would say right now, if you were to look at the field of who's going to be there on the 4th of July, you never know what's going to happen because there's still 2 more qualifiers, and you don't know what's going to happen there in DC and California. But I would say you're looking at James Webb, phenomenal leader from Australia, has had an insane year. Jeff Esper, obviously, is number 2 in the world. Jeff is a machine. Pat Bertoletti, he just won in Cleveland. Pat's eaten 55, I believe, on the 4th before, so phenomenal leader. There's a kid, Nat, I don't want to mispronounce his entire name, from Thailand, who is a great eater. It'll be his first time at the 4th, but sky's the limit for him. And then there's me. I'm going to waddle myself up there, my ridiculous hair, my fanny pack, and see what I can pull off. So
that's what I was going to ask. So under a month before this, what's the prep like? Take us inside a little bit to the prep for this.
Just that's it. That's all I do. No, I would say it's there's practices. There's going to be at least, I have 5 practices scheduled on the calendar. They're written like a beautiful mind in my room at home in the master bedroom. They're timed. Everything is prepped to peak for the 4th of July. I wasn't interested in peaking for my qualifier. Because I don't think you can really peak too many times too frequently.
Yeah.
I know what I've done in practice. I know it's much more than I did at my qualifier. And I know realistically people don't expect me to win. They expect James or Jeff or Pat to win. And that's cool for me. But I can't play defense here. That's one thing that's different about what we do. So all I can do is go in there, know that I did everything psychotically possible to try to be the best in the world on the 4th of July. And just try to focus on bringing a big yellow belt home.
Well, if there's one thing I learned in the couple of years I got to cover the sport and call the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, you and your wife, the first family of competitive eating, the maniacal preparation is going to be there, and we're all rooting for you, brother. Thanks so much for the time today. I hope your phone calms down here soon, and we'll talk to you again around the 4th of July. All right, brother?
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Awesome. Nick Wehry, kind enough to join us and give us some time. He's awesome, man. It really is, Dad. It's you've watched the sport for years. I watched the sport for years. The preparation is high-level athletics. It's not just people showing up to eat hot dogs.
I love watching this, and that's the one thing I will always be jealous of you for. You got to call it twice, and I never got to call it one time when I was at ESPN, and for that I'm sorely disappointed.
Well, speaking of preparation, coming up next, one NFL quarterback deciding he's got better things to do than prepare with his team. You'll never guess who it is next.
Jets will be without two very important players for their mandatory minicamps this week, one being, well, their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, the other being edge rusher Hassan Reddick. Both skipping out. Their absences are unexcused, meaning they both will be hit with fines. Here's what head coach Robert Saleh had to say about both of them missing camp.
So we've got two inexcused absences. One obviously being Hassan. Spoke to him over the weekend. Appreciate the dialogue. He's in a really good place mentally, working his tail off like we already know, and but he's choosing to sit out this one inexcused. The second one is Aaron. Aaron and I spoke before OTA started. He's been very good in communication. He's been here the entire time. It's inexcused, but he had an event that was very important to him, which he communicated.
Okay, so he communicated the event. Diana Rossini then reported this morning Aaron Rodgers is skipping all of Jets' mandatory minicamp this week because he prefers to be somewhere else away from football. That's his choice. So this isn't a quote. She doesn't say where she heard this from. We do know that the head coach said he talked with his quarterback. He was aware of the event. So I don't know if this is just stirring the pot or what it is, but Senior, what is your take on this situation?
First, it's unexcused, not inexcused. I just, far be it from me to be the, English speaking the correct way.
Did you just grammar police us?
I did. I grammar police because he kept saying it over and over again. I mean, over and over at some point.
Inexcusable. He's probably in his head is like inexcusable.
Inexcusable, unexcused. Because I even typed in inexcused to see if it would be, one of the pronunciations, and everything that comes up is unexcused. So just want to get that out of the way. Then this will probably, knowing our talk right before we came back on, not sit well with you, Mike. I don't care. I don't. This affects me none. Not at all. Not one bit. I mean, I get it being unexcused. You can't excuse that because then other players may try and say, I have something to be at, excuse me as well. But if it's unexcused, you're going to be fined and have to deal with that. So I said, hey, I just corrected it. Doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect at it. That's for sure. Mike, I really don't have an issue with this. I really don't. And certainly players are going to say the same thing. Breece Hall said he doesn't have an issue with it. Everybody knows how hard he's working. Look what he did when he hurt it to try and get back to play the season, whether that was for him or for the team, who knows. But we were all kind of amazed at how quickly he came back. So him being ready to go hasn't been an issue to me at all. He's been there for all the OTAs from the beginning and told his coach, I'm not going to be at minicamp. I have this that I'm going to go do, and he's going to get fined for it. It affects me not one bit, not going to lie.
No, from a football standpoint, this doesn't matter. We talked about this with Lamar Jackson the other week, where veteran players who have been around their teams, who are, and in Aaron's case, basically the offense, right? We saw this conversation happen with the Jets last year in Nathaniel Hackett, where the offense is Aaron Rodgers. The offense is what Aaron Rodgers wants to do and do best. And so it all starts and ends with him. And that changes some of the work that you can get done in minicamp, but that, it's all relative in the grand scheme of things if he's been there. Dad, I agree with you from the football standpoint. For me, this falls under the category, and this is something you always talk to me about, though, of unnecessarily making problems for your teammates. Because Aaron Rodgers at this point had to know, hey, if I'm here and I don't give an explanation, guess what they're going to spend this entire time talking about, asking my teammates about, asking my coach about, after I just went out there last season and said all this stuff about how all of the behavior that doesn't lead to winning needs to be out of the building, and we got to flush the pipes, and we got to do all this stuff, and paints the picture one way, and then goes out here and very publicly, I'm not saying in actuality does this, but optically, he knows the way everyone's going to respond to this, and in my mind, it would have been very easy for Aaron to just address this instead of making everybody else be the one holding the microphone and getting out. And it could be, listen, this could be something incredibly legitimate, could be something going on that's a family matter, could be a wedding, could be any number of things that go on. I know everyone's looking at RFK Jr.'s, circuit and events of this offseason and pointed out something on Thursday and wants to do all that. But this, it could be a legitimate reason that is deeply personal to Aaron that we'd all have to respect. But recent history doesn't help him out there. And he knows the way that his words or lack of words are going to end up becoming the topic of conversation. And that's the one thing that I think as a teammate, you at least owe your guys to some extent.
That I would agree with, because you're putting it on other people then, especially when you know what your words or lack of words carry for a team and for a league. So I would agree with that, for him to not get it out there before. Hey, not now. It's not like these guys have media availability where they're going to be asked questions while OTAs are going on. It doesn't work that way, but that doesn't mean Aaron couldn't have put out a statement to the media so it didn't all fall on Robert Saleh and going, wait a minute, Aaron Rodgers isn't here? He could have done that. I would agree with you. He could have taken the first shot for that one, so it wasn't wait a minute, what do you mean he's not here? Because as we both agree, football, it does not matter. But perception of a lot of things, especially because that line's getting thrown back in his face a lot. Keep all the BS out of this. It's all about winning. You do everything to win. And here you are at a mandatory event, not there. Because you felt you needed to be somewhere else. So I can see where that contradictory type of thing may have people question Aaron, but he's been questioned a lot for some of the things he's been said. So I'm with you. Football side, as I said, no issue at all. Just from a how you handle it standpoint, he could have put out a statement, done something to soften this for Robert Saleh, because, even though he may have thought, hey, he's the head coach, this is his job, this is what he's got to do, but Aaron Rodgers has to know his position in the NFL, and he definitely could have come out and said something before.
And there also is part of it where the Jets, hey, you know what you signed up for with the Aaron Rodgers experience, right? This is what he did more so in Green Bay. Like last year when Aaron was around for everything, people in Green Bay were looking at this like, what the hell? Because that had been the MO for the last couple of off seasons as a Packer, where he wasn't around as much. He was taking, and a lot of veteran players do this. We saw Tom Brady even do this towards the end of his career, where they take more time with their family in the offseason, older players. Yep. We know the structure of the offseason might even change to reflect that for everybody pretty soon, but when you've got the background of the darkness retreat and the ayahuasca and everything else, this is also going to allow Aaron Rodgers to do his favorite thing in the world, which is come back in his first appearance on whatever media outlet, whether it's McAfee or otherwise, and talk about how the media wants to go and paint him in a bad light and do all this stuff as if this wasn't infinitely preventable. So everyone's going to get what they want out of this, and ultimately, if you're the Jets, none of this matters. What matters is Aaron Rodgers getting past play number 4 in week 1 when you go to play San Francisco. And so far this offseason, as long as the report's been, hey, Aaron's back and he's healthy. Hey, Aaron's back and he looks good. Hey, he's progressing nicely after the injury from last year. Then the rest of this, you just sort of grit your teeth and bear it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's 1,000% correct. But it's going to be a legitimate question for the first reporter to ask him is, in January, you said this about the most important thing is winning and putting your team in a position to win. And in a mandatory event, you felt something was more important than football. And you know what? It's a fair question. It's a fair question to ask him. Again, I don't care. And if I were a teammate, I wouldn't care. I'm sure over the years of me being at mini camps, some players have missed for whatever reasons. And there are, as you well know, there are X amount of players in this league who could do this. I certainly was not one of them, but that could do this. Maybe they wouldn't want to do it, and maybe they wouldn't do it, but certainly would have the ability or the power to be able to do something like this. But that's going to be the first question asked of Aaron when he steps in front of a camera or whatever outlet he goes on, if that person would ask that. And it'll be interesting what his answer is going to be. As most of the time, Aaron gives an answer. It's, sometimes we raise our eyebrow and sometimes, we have a different reaction.
Yes, and one thing we know for sure is we'll be watching when it happens, and it'll be something pretty interesting in all of this. Hassan Reddick, by the way, I'd have to imagine they're going to have to get that deal done soon. Trading for a guy like that, you put a lot of leverage in his lap to go and get things done. And so it seems like anything else, Rob Saleh understands the drill on that one, and at this point has to understand the drill on Aaron Rodgers. They turned to a man they maybe didn't fully understand to try and go get it done in a time of need. And as Aaron said before, if it fails with him this weekend, it probably takes everyone with him. And Rob Saleh acutely aware of the way that is looking. Coming up next, though, speaking of acute awareness, the world of golf is acutely aware that one man sits atop the throne right now. Have we finally arrived at Scheffler versus the field as we head into U.S. Open week? We'll get to that next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. World number 1 Scottie Scheffler. A heavy favorite once again over at the DraftKings Sportsbook, this time for the US Open. Opened 3-1, now down to plus 280. The only time his odds were lower in a tournament at the DraftKings Sportsbook a few weeks ago at the Charles Schwab Challenge. That was plus 260, so getting closer to that number. 3-1, the shortest odds for a golfer to win a major in the history of DraftKings Sportsbook. That's since 2018. Scottie in the last 8 tournaments, guys. 5 wins, 2 top 2 finishes, and a tied for 8th. And that's when he went to jail. He's won more money already this year than he did all of last year, breaking his own single season record. So it seems like it's Scottie versus the field. There is an option at the DraftKings Sportsbook, the big guns versus the field. You get Scheffler, McIlroy, Schauffele at plus 150. How could you not want to bet him at this point, Senior?
I mean, there's no way you can't not bet him. I mean, the thing about his game and some of the numbers that he's putting together, you do put the name Tiger Woods next to them. And I think the biggest thing for him, because Mike, Bill Belichick, this was one of his mantras, and it's not like he invented it. It's true. It's not like you go out and win a game. It's you wait for the other team to make a mistake that helps lose a game, right? Scottie Scheffler isn't going to lose anything. So he's so consistent that it's the others around him when it's close that end up making the mistakes. If you're waiting on Scottie to come back to you or make that mistake when it's close, you're going to be in trouble because he doesn't. He's just so damn consistent. And that's one of the things, I guess, you want to say Tiger-esque. I don't know if I want to say that because Tiger was so dominant that I think it made players change the way they played to try and compete with Tiger. I don't know if we're here like that on Scottie Scheffler, but Scottie, I think his biggest attribute is he's so damn consistent. And you have to almost play mistake free to stay with him or beat him. And I think that's the toughest part for the other golfers.
So going back to May, I think this might have been in the lead up to Augusta, Data Golf, and this is Kyle Porter over at CBS Golf. They put together an all-time ranking that uses a formula that measures a golfer's last 150 rounds and the strokes gained in those rounds. And Scottie Scheffler and Tiger Woods were the only ones with over 3 strokes gained in their last 150 rounds in the last 25 years. Like, it really is getting to that territory here sooner than later. Yeah. And think about this, Dad. Obviously, Scottie is the massive favorite here at the U.S. Open, and depending on how things go at the British Open later on, like, we're talking about a guy that jail may have been the only thing that kept him from trying to go for the Tiger Slam. Like the Grand Slam in the same calendar here may have only been thwarted. My favorite quote was from Rory McIlroy, who was asked Tuesday about what impressed him most about Scheffler's performance. And he said, the fact that the only thing that took him from winning a golf tournament was going into a jail cell for an hour. That's the point that we're getting. But we're also doing it, Dad, with remarkable consistency, with a guy who outside of that story to jail is not really a needle mover in any meaningful way versus Tiger Woods that was a full-blown phenomenon for so many different reasons. And so you're right. I don't know if it's ever going to approach what Tiger did from a golf standpoint, but also what he did for the sport in general in terms of attention.
Yeah. And also, I think, Mike, you and I could break down Pinehurst since we went there when we were at ESPN with a tournament. We had a bunch of winners meet us at Pinehurst, and we golfed there for a couple of days. The best thing about it was getting hammered golfing the Cradle, the par 3 there, which was just phenomenal. So this course is murderous from especially the greens, the kind of the hourglass greens, the way you think you hit a good shot and for a hack and it gets right on the green, all of a sudden it rolls off, or you putt, a 4-foot putt, next thing you know, you're off the green. I hate this. It was beautiful and I loved it, but man, I hated it.
Yeah, it's an incredible course. They actually let us drink and take carts on it, which was cool as all hell. It's a beautiful course.
Sure was.
But yes, it is one. And Dad, I think this is, part of the elements of the course physically are, Claudia, what also brings Tiger Woods back into the equation for this tournament here. We saw him out there in the practice round going the other day, but this is a tournament that because of the layout of the course, Tiger actually thinks that he can go and compete in.
Yeah, he's confident not only that he can compete, but that he can win it. We'll get to sound from him in a second, but 48 years old, he is that confident. 15-time major championships, making his 3rd start in the U.S. Open. He tied for 3rd in 1999, 2nd in 2005, and then he missed the most recent because he was out with injury in 2019. This time around, though, he's ready to win.
Yeah, I do. I do. I do feel like I have the strength to be able to do it. It's just a matter of doing it. This golf course is going to test every single aspect of your game, especially mentally, and just the mental discipline that it takes to play this particular golf course. And it's going to take a lot. And we've been working on that and making sure that I understand the game plan and be ready, in 2 more days.
Senior, he is plus 220 to make the cut. Last time we talked about Tiger Woods making the cut, you faded him at the Masters. So I would like to know, have you changed your mind? If this course is supposed to bode well for his game, would you bet him to make the cut?
Yes, I would. I would.
Welcome back, Dad. Welcome back to the side of history.
Listen, Masters was it, and didn't go great at the Masters, did it? Last I checked. I mean,
what did he do at the Masters, Dad?
He did. He made the cut. I didn't think he would.
He did. That's what I thought he did.
But he did make the cut. And as far as him sitting there saying, I think I could win it, what the hell else is Tiger Woods going to say? Tiger Woods won the Masters not that long ago in 2019, right? So he feels he can catch fire for 4 days, once or one of 4 times a year at the majors to try and get it done. But this one, it's a flatter course. The weather's going to be nice and warm for him, something he's used to in Florida, living in Florida. It's going to be in the 90s and it's going to be humid. I'm on it, Mike. I'm betting him to make the cut this time around.
And that's about, I think, the most fun that we can expect to have with Tiger Woods at this point.
Yeah.
I understand. You mentioned 2019. I will never forget watching that tournament and being in a bar full of people and seeing grown men cry, watching Tiger Woods get back to a point that people never thought he would. People on chairs. I get why we were all chasing that high. But I think at this point, between what seems so far, I haven't seen the numbers, but a likely failed launch of the clothing line that was ill-conceived at best. And now the way Tiger's body has responded in a lot of these settings, Dad, I just don't think that's realistic anymore. But if he can stick around for weekend golf and make the cut, I think that's a win for everybody involved. I think that's a win for golf and a tournament this weekend where, because it's a major, we get the live guys back. You're seeing Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau Bryson DeChambeau's name up near the top. Obviously, John Rahm out giving free feet, by the way, at the course, walking around with the sandal because the infection on his foot that's going to keep him out of that tournament. So you're not going to have him up there as competition, but you get the live guys back. But we all know Tiger Woods, much like we've seen, I think we missed this. Maybe it wasn't the same discourse-wise, but in terms of needle moving, the way we've talked about with a Caitlin Clark, the spike in conversation and attention, the way we talked about with Tebow and LeBron James, Tiger Woods has also been that instant bit of offense for anybody looking to draw eyes to their sport.
I'm trying to look. I couldn't find it really quick how the sales are doing on his. You don't like it, huh? I like the logo in the middle of the chest. I kind of do like that, I'll say. I don't dislike it. I actually like it. I know you don't like it. I don't mind it at all. I kind of like it, but I can't find. I was trying to quickly search how well sales are going, but I guess you can put numbers any way you want. But I'm with you. I think that's all you can. That's the start of a hope with Tiger at one of the majors right now. Make the cut, and then God forbid he get anywhere near the first page, by the end of Saturday or the beginning of Sunday. Then oh my God, you want to watch TV ratings just go through the roof. But the start of the hope is just get to Saturday. Be there on the tee box on Saturday morning.
And he'll be teeing off at 7:29 on Thursday morning with Willie Z and Matty Fitzpatrick. We'll be going out in that group together with them, Claudia, as we get set for a weekend where, listen, outside of Scottie Scheffler, Xander Schauffele's now got a major championship to his name. We know Rory McIlroy is someone that's trying to get back into that. Colin Morikawa played really well this past weekend too. So there are going to be other names and challengers and great young golfers. But at this point, it is Scottie's world, and everyone else is just playing for second, unless we see those red and blue lights flashing in the background again before this tournament. So we'll wait and see if there is some $80 pair of pants that's going to thwart greatness yet again. But coming up next, speaking of greatness, we're going to check in with our buddy Rachel Nichols ahead of Game 3 of the NBA Finals next here on GoJo and Golic.
back here on GoJo and Golic to dig into some of the numbers for Game 3 tonight between the Dallas Mavs and the Boston Celtics. This line opened as the Mavs the 1-point home favorite. You can see this at the DraftKings Sportsbook. And that actually pushed to 2, so some money came in, some buyback as there always is, especially with how hot Boston has been, settling here around 2.5. So Dallas is the favorite. And this is a very surprising number to me. 85% of the handle, which means the money, the sharp guys, the ones that move this number, are on the Dallas Mavs to cover. Now, usually it's the public who will like a favorite and they go in the direction that the handle does, but no, that's not the case because less than 50% are on the Mavs. The Boston is getting the love from the public, which I guess in your mind is not too surprising because Boston fans especially don't think that Boston will ever lose a game ever again. To break this down and the rest of the series, the guys are joined by a very special guest.
Always a pleasure when we get to welcome in our next guest, great friend, and among her many hats and responsibilities covering the NBA, the co-host of the Bully Ball podcast with DeMarcus Cousins, you can check out here on the DraftKings network. It is our friend Rachel Nichols. Rachel, how are you?
I'm good. I'm at the DraftKings studio. I feel like Vanna White here. At the next Showcase Showdown special will be this basketball. Guess the value.
Exactly.
Don't go over.
Like I say, closest without going over,
Exactly.
You win both showcases and everything's great as we mix a bunch of game show metaphors here. So, but yeah, exactly. Rachel, as if she didn't have enough on her plate already, coming in here and going to make us better. And Rachel, why don't we start with you? You're out at the DraftKings studio in Boston as you have seen the Boston Celtics hot start to this NBA Finals series. They take the 2-0 lead coming off of a Game 2 performance that saw an improved effort from the Dallas Mavericks, but still ultimately a loss in here. As you sat around and took in the scene at TD Garden, did you feel better or worse about the Mavs' chances of making this a series as it shifts back to Dallas based on what you saw in Game 2?
I mean, I think it's going to be harder just because you have a Celtics team that if you look at the regular season and the playoffs, they're 78-20. 78-20 this regular season and playoffs. They're not going to lose 4 of their next 5 games. I mean, that would just be an unbelievable turnaround. So I think that by Dallas not winning Game 2, especially a Game 2 where the Celtics had their bad three-point shooting game that we all thought would probably come at some point, just the law of averages during this finals, they couldn't win that. I think they have really dug themselves into a hole. So seeing that, just because of the way the numbers work, that makes me less confident they can make it a series. But going into this series, I picked the Celtics, and to me it felt very clear. Mavericks have been a great story. They have been a great team, a revelation throughout these playoffs. I think they have a ton to look forward to. Luka Doncic, I have no doubt, will win an NBA title at some point, will be a Finals MVP at some point. I mean, he is just so unstoppable in so many ways. And I still think if you're just talking about best overall player, we say a lot of the time in the NBA, the team with the best player should win the series. And going into this series, I thought and still think Luka Doncic is probably the best player on the floor just in terms of overall. However, the Celtics, and I said this over and over again, they have the next bunch of best guys. And Kyrie, of course, is a force. But we saw in the Oklahoma City series in the second round, you can't shut him down. So just because the Wolves couldn't do it, and he scored over 30 in 3 of those 4 games, doesn't mean that nobody could do it. We saw a team do it just the round before. So you kind of thought with the Celtics, with their individual defenders, would be able to put someone on Kyrie. We've seen Drew Holiday do a fantastic job on Kyrie. Jaylen Brown has popped in on Kyrie. Derek White has popped in on Kyrie. So the fact that he isn't scoring the way he wants to is not a shock to me. I am a little surprised he has not sunk a single three-point shot this entire series so far, but that will probably change when he's at home in friendlier confines. But I'm not surprised to see the Celtics, which are a much, much deeper roster, and they can go 5 out at this point with Kristaps Porzingis back in the lineup, succeed at this level. They are just dominating on both ends of the floor.
I tried to be the contrarian and picked Dallas in 6, and after Game 1, immediately found the video and deleted it like I never said it. So at this point, because you're right. I mean,
because the internet doesn't ever remember. No one screenshots anything.
No.
You're good.
No, that'll never come back to haunt me.
Never.
I mean, you're right. Boston's got 3 players in 2 games over 20 points, and Jason Tatum isn't one of them at this point. Their movement of the ball to get open threes is ridiculous. So I agree. I don't think anybody feels that Dallas can win 4 or 5. But in trying to make this a series, will it be more Dallas doing better things or Boston not doing good things.
No, it's got to be Dallas doing better things. I mean, look, the role players that's shown for them at so many points during this playoffs have not had 2 good games. So P.J. Washington, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, who was just a revelation for most of this postseason and who is still just one of the most even-tempered, pleasant kids. If you guys have the chance to have him on the show anytime, I recommend it. He is just a pleasure to talk to, and obviously a terrific player, but he has not been able to make any kind of impact in the first 2 games. So I would expect that some of those role players will play better at home. It's a cliche because it's true. I would expect Kyrie to start finding a little bit more windows. I mean, that's what the Celtics have really done. They've just shut down everywhere he goes. You know, they're just shutting down every time he tries to step into the paint. They're shutting down his lanes. So I would expect him to be looking at film these few days, and Jason Kidd's going to try to scheme him ways to make more of an impact. So I think if the Mavericks can win Game 3, and they are favored to win Game 3 if you go on DraftKings. I think they're up, they're 1.5-point favorites to win Game 3. But they're going to have to play better themselves. They're not going to be able to depend on the Celtics not to play well, because the Celtics didn't shoot very well in this last game. Jason Tatum hasn't scored more than 18 points in this series yet, and they still haven't won a game yet, Dallas. So it really has to be about Dallas playing their game more than anything else.
Again, we see Boston at some point in some amount of games winning this thing. So then going forward, how open is the Boston Celtic window? Because we're kind of losing the get 3 superstars together NBA and growing from within, and Boston's got it. So that window, that how open is it for a while?
It's definitely open for a while, and they just have a great timing with the way the CBA has worked, and they've set up the second apron and all these confusing terms that normal fans shouldn't even have to learn because it's ridiculous. But they basically, the new collective bargaining agreement makes it very hard for teams to accumulate stars, to trade big stars. It's just a lot more difficult going from now forward to be able to build these teams, and the Celtics have one. And they've got both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum locked up. The $300 million plus contracts are going to be all worth it, because if you look at what the salary cap is going to go up, those contracts are going to start to seem very reasonable. So I think they're in a really good position. Brad Stevens won Executive of the Year this year for a reason. He's put these guys in a great position to win and gotten a team with talent and contracts they can hold. However, all of that being said, no one's window is as open as it used to be. I mean, we keep talking about like, oh, can anyone be Michael Jordan again? I don't think anyone's winning 6 titles again, because it's a different NBA. I mean, we talked about, right, the Bill Russell Celtics, and we almost say, oh, that doesn't count, right? 11 rings, that doesn't really count because the NBA was so different then, right? There were 4 teams, there was a beer league, all this stuff. We're going to say at some point, we're going to look back at the Michael Jordan era and even, into the Shaq and Kobe era. There was a real divide after that of when we had this influx of high talent international players come in. And you look at the last 5 MVP awards, they've all gone to international players. And I just think that this is so much more of a talent-rich league, that you have so many more teams that are just thick with talent in a way that we didn't see even 20, 30 years ago, that everyone's window is just smaller. I mean, Golden State, obviously was able to do what they were able to do, but even they ran into, at the end, not being able to kind of maintain it as long as they expected to. And they're right now struggling with that and how to do that in a place where they're into the second apron and all of these other things. So I just think you're going to see teams have a harder time. We went from 6 titles with MJ, 4 titles, we saw Golden State and that dynasty put together. I don't know if we're going to see a team that can build 3 titles on one group anymore. The rules are just changing, and the amount of talent is changing. So we'll have to see as this number sort of gets down and down and down.
It's funny to think about that in the macro sense and then the micro sense of this series with this Boston Celtics team, because I thought a lot about Golden State and those early championship teams where you had someone like Andre Iguodala win finals MVP because of the defensive presence and how spread out the talent was on that team. As you look at this Celtics team so far through 2 games of this series, we had all the stuff and quotes from Jason Kidd about Jaylen Brown being the best player on this team and maybe trying to sow a little bit of discord. But as you look through so far, could we see someone like Drew Holiday be the finals MVP based on the way this series has gone so far?
Through 2 games, I would vote him for MVP through these first 2 games. Now, it takes a lot more than 2 games to win a finals MVP, and we could see Tatum have a breakout game. And if anyone gave an finals MVP to Jaylen Brown with the way he's played these 2 games, nobody could argue with that. I mean, they really, there's a lot of candidates around that team. I do not bet. I do not bet in general. I do not bet on the NBA. I'm an NBA voter. I was very surprised to see Drew Holiday's odds at plus 750 to win MVP, considering how he's played in the first 2 games. I think that you're going to have a lot of bettors who do want to go take a look at that number, because this is not like in a vacuum. We've seen 2 games already, and this series is going to go 4, 5, 6 games, and 2 of them are already in the books. So we have seen people turn in the performances. Jason Tatum, thus far, while he has been great at playing a complete game, the rebounding numbers are fantastic. The assist numbers are fantastic. He's not forcing it. He's not trying to play hero ball. He's doing exactly what his team needs. He's not turning in a Finals MVP performance if you look at the stat line. So far, at least in 2 of the however many games, is it going to be 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6? Jason Tatum wouldn't be so far the MVP, even though he is still the MVP favorite in Vegas. I can't see, with the way voters vote, him being the MVP off of these 2 games. So that leaves a couple other guys, and they both have pretty plus odds right now in terms of the MVP race. And I think it's interesting, if you are an NBA bettor, to go take a look at those numbers.
Do we make too much out of whose team is Boston's?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that in the modern NBA it's really anyone's team in that way. Certainly the Mavericks are the most heliocentric team we have left in the NBA. Luka's usage is as high as Michael Jordan's was, and no one else really comes close. And even that, Luka can't win a title by himself. And so I just think that recognizing that, you guys have known it for decades in football. Nobody, we celebrate quarterbacks, but they still can't win unless someone else catches the ball and someone plays defense and the O-line does what it does. So I just think in basketball, this idea that it's someone's team and someone, is powering the whole thing. Yes, you can have a star or a recognized number 1 superstar, but nobody wins by themselves. And so therefore, to me, it's no one's team in that way. And I was surprised at Jason Kidd, spilling the metaphorical soda as he did after game 1, only in that, these 2 players seem so past that in terms of, getting insecure about who says it's his team. I mean, these guys just are so done with that discussion. They've heard it for 8 years now. They're not participating anymore. So I was surprised that Jason did it for that reason. And I was surprised he did it after game 1. I mean, it was kind of telling that he was trying to pull that out already. I don't know. I think that sort of hit a light bulb for me about what he sees the field. He's a smart guy, and he knows where his team is in this series.
I think we've seen a lot of interesting quotes out of Dallas between Jason Kidd there, but also Kyrie Irving after game 1 coming out and saying, like, oh, yeah, I expected the boos to be a little bit louder and everything there. And Rachel, I'm curious, we talked a lot about the sort of Kyrie renaissance this postseason and this season in general opposite Luka Doncic, but there were some pretty clear moments early in that game where he was barking back and forth with fans in Boston. How much do you think that really has bothered him so far in the series amongst the things that have gone on in the court as well?
Well, look, I definitely think Kyrie has made amazing strides working on himself. I mean, I'm not even talking about the political issues. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about, if you listen to him, he will tell you over and over again that he has just changed the way he processes his experiences, that he talks about them off the court, that he used to keep everything inside. He has found ways to talk about things and work through issues so that they don't come up in other places, and that was a big part of his problems in Boston the first time around and in other parts of his career. So I really believe him when he went into this series saying he thought he had worked through those issues about what had happened to him in Boston and sort of his relationship with the fans and expecting them to be crazy and being able to just roll with it. I absolutely believe that is how he went into the series. However, it is clear it has bothered him at least a little bit. I was very surprised to see him make that comment. That was just a very baity kind of thing. There's no reason for him to do that. And then we saw, I was in the building last night, and they're booing plenty, and he was getting back and forth with a few fans, and he's not going to have that in Dallas, obviously. So maybe that will contribute to him playing better in Game 3 as well. It did surprise me, but it is hard. We ask a lot of these guys. I mean, you guys both know it, having, tens of thousands of people screaming at you, and especially in a basketball environment where you can really hear a lot of people in the lower bowl. It is a lot to deal with, and some guys let it does seep in a little bit. I don't know if you saw Luka, who loves it when people trash talk him. Wick Grossbeck, the owner of the Celtics, was giving him a hard time courtside, and Luka went and nailed a shot, and then came back and had something to say to him. But obviously, Wick had the better of that deal by getting the win after the end of Game 2.
Listen, these guys are way better than us as football players. Their proximity to fans is way closer than ours. Football players would go body slam some of these fans because they wouldn't be able to take it. So I give the basketball players credit for holding back sometimes the way they do, even though Kyrie kind of brought that one on himself by saying that. Okay, Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
There are so many tentacles to this, Rachel, that I'm not even going to pick one. I'm going to let you pick one on what you think is maybe the biggest misconception or what people are missing the most, or wherever you feel a comment is needed about the Caitlin Clark situation.
Well, first of all, I think she's doing a phenomenal job sorting and sifting through all of this. I mean, to have this much attention on her, and I said this during the NCAA tournament as well, it is a huge difference when you are talking to an athlete, and we even saw it as far back as the NBA All-Star game with Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry. When they were having that three-point contest, it is a huge difference. Steph, are you going to make your three-point shot? Versus Sabrina, how do all women stand everywhere about their value as athletes and as people? I mean, that was really the level of different questions that they were getting. And so then we go to the NCAA tournament. Caitlin Clark, who's having to answer for all women everywhere, for all female athletes everywhere, carrying the sport, having people put so much on her, and she was able to handle all of that so well. I give her a lot of credit for that, and I give her a lot of credit for how she's handling this entry into the WNBA and all of the attention and all of the conversation. Some of it really smart, and some of it, frankly, not smart. I mean, there are a lot of people out there trying to turn this entire season of the WNBA into an episode of the Kardashians, and it is so frustrating to see women who work and sweat and, yes, have flagrant fouls and have rivalries and trash talk. And when men, it's of course hard-nosed and aggressive and they're tough. And with women, they're catty and jealous and all of that stuff. It is very hard, I think, for all of the women of the WNBA and for Caitlin to hear all of this stuff. And I think, frankly, all of them, and she in particular, has handled it really well. I think when we get to the Olympics, you just have to recognize how hard it is to make this team. And Caitlin Clark is hardly the first person to be in this situation. Candace Parker, who had won 2 Olympic gold medals, is one of the best female basketball players this country has ever produced. She got snubbed from an Olympic team a couple sessions ago. I mean, there are so many situations where people who are worthy of making teams haven't. And this is no exception, by the way. There's other players who were, quote, snubbed or didn't make the cut for this Team USA, a women's team that's going forward into Paris. So I don't see this as some failure on her part. I don't see it as the establishment trying to elbow her out. You know, yes, if she played on the Olympic team, I think that exposure for the women's game would have been significant because people are just so interested in her. But the exposure should be good with these other players too, because they're phenomenal. And this team, it's 12 players, and you're already talking about a league where it's harder to make rosters than it is in the NBA. I just want to leave you with this number on this situation, that if you're in the NBA, there's about 450 or so players, depends on the year with rosters and everything, who play in the NBA. So say you're the 300th player in the NBA. You are well in the NBA. You have a job, right? There's 150 guys worse than you. If you're the 300th best women's player, you don't even make the roster in the WNBA. If you're the 300th best player in this country of a female in the world, of a female basketball player, you will not make a WNBA roster because there are fewer teams and there are fewer roster spots. So we just have to remember how much more competitive these spots are with the women's game, and with expansion that will hopefully change. But right now it is harder to make teams. That is just how it is. And I think Caitlin Clark, this will do well for her Rookie of the Year chances. I think that we will see Caitlin Clark on plenty of Olympic teams going forward. It's kind of like Victor Wembanyama when he didn't get Defensive Player of the Year, and you said, don't worry, it's highly likely he could get the next 3 to 5. Caitlin Clark will be on the next couple Olympic teams. If she doesn't make it in halfway through her rookie year, I think that's okay. And I certainly tip my cap to the women who did make it, because it is a very, very deserving roster.
An incredibly bit of valuable perspective there. Everyone would do well to listen to as it pertains to this, in a conversation that sometimes lacks that same perspective in a lot of the places it's being had. Rachel, we always appreciate the time from you. We always feel smarter on the back end of it. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the finals, and maybe try and get some rest when you can, amongst all of the many things you continue to do, including show off the wonderful studio.
There we go. Bye, guys. I'll see you soon.
The Buffalo Bills receiver room was already thin heading into the season, and now some bad news the first day of minicamp. An injury to Khalil Shakir, their third-year receiver. He left the field early, reportedly suffering some sort of lower body injury. Shakir was observed in conversation with the team's trainers before limping off the practice field. He did not return. GoJo, they started the day missing 7 players with injury, and then this happens. Not what you want to see on day one.
No, certainly not. And in a lot of new spots on this team, there have been players that have been a bit banged up. But that wide receiver room, Dad, going to be the focus for a lot of this season. Yeah. No more Stephon Diggs in that room, who's been a huge part of the development of Josh Allen that we've seen over the years. And as they bring Keon Coleman in, their second-round pick, who's already so beloved in the city, he's still one of the many receivers on this team that actually hasn't caught a pass from Josh Allen. That distinction belongs to only Khalil Shakir. So we talked before, Dad, about the value of Aaron Rodgers missing the mini camp stuff, but how much does it matter for this Bills team and this offense with a new receiver room to not have so many of these guys on the field for this?
Well, I mean, again, I think the time quarterbacks and receivers spend together outside of mini camps is important as well. We always hear of quarterbacks and receivers meeting up and getting together, but there is a shift here. Listen, for this whole team, forgetting just the receivers, of which obviously Diggs and Gabe Davis gone from this team, but it's another one of those teams. Who did we just talk about? Why am I drawing a blank about yesterday so quickly? We were talking about the inefficiencies and needed help at wide receiver, but the tight end room was pretty good. I can't believe I'm forgetting the team we talked about yesterday already, but you could say the same thing about the Bills, right? And the Bills and that tight end room that they have. What Dalton Kincaid was able to do after Knox got hurt, then Knox came back, and now that 2 tight end set. Man, I mean, that's something to write home about right there. So I think that's something to look forward to, but you still would like to get a couple of heavy-hitting receivers.
You certainly would, and they're hoping that Keon Coleman, especially that big-bodied type of wide receiver, can be that physical X guy to help you out. But, Dad, this was also an offense that changed drastically over the course of last season when Joe Brady took over and in that second half of the season. So for more on the outlook of that as we head into the rest of the Bills offseason, former Pro Bowl center for the Buffalo Bills, current Bills radio analyst and host of the Centered on Buffalo podcast, Eric Wood, kind enough to join us now. Morning, Wood Dog. How we feeling, brother?
I'm doing great. It's a great morning when I get to talk to 2 of my favorite people in the world, and senior and junior here, so I'm excited to join you guys.
No, we appreciate the time as always, man. You're the best, and we know you got a lot going on. But we were just talking about that wide receiver room in Buffalo, a little banged up. Khalil Shakir limping off the field the other day. How much concern is there around Buffalo for what this wide receiver room is going to look like in 2024?
You know, I think there's a lot of concern just because they relied so heavily on Stephon Diggs over the last few years. Now, when you look at what they did in that late stretch, that run to get them into the playoffs last year, and then leading up to that loss in Kansas City, that heartbreaker at home in the playoffs, Stephon Diggs was not heavily involved in that win streak once Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator. I don't know if the writing was on the wall then that maybe this is the time that we're going to move on from Stephon Diggs. He's getting older. And the production late in the season, the last few years, has just not been there. And so, you know, they kind of took a page out of Kansas City's playbook, some others out there that are going with more of a wide receiver room by committee. And I know you guys know this, but it's so interesting to me right now, the discrepancy in the NFL between teams. On some teams like the Eagles, the Dolphins, that were willing to spend over 20% of the salary cap on the receiver room, and then others like the Chiefs, like the Bills are doing now, where they're saying, okay, we're going to draft some young guys, see if we get some value there. You know, likely Dalton Kincaid's their number 1 target this year. Travis Kelce, obviously the number 1 target in Kansas City. So looks like the Bills are maybe taking a page out of their playbook, saying, look, we're going to pay some other spots. We're going to get younger throughout this team and see if that helps us late in the season.
Where are you with the Bills and the fans with the Bills, a team that, you know, you keep wondering how long the window of opportunity is going to be there? Obviously, Josh Allen being there helps that, but a lot of turnover on the team this year. So go back and put yourself in that locker room and see the changes that have gone around in the offseason, still trying to get to a team like the Kansas City Chiefs and get by them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confidence, honestly. And look, when you got Josh Allen, there's going to never be a true rebuild. You're never going to be bad enough to have an absolute rebuild. And, you move on from Diggs and you move on from some veteran faces, some guys that I even played with back in 2017, Trey White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. I played with all those guys. Mitch Morris was brought in the following year to replace me. They move on from him, their center from last year. So a lot of familiar faces they've moved on from. Now, Tre'Davious White's been hurt the last 2 seasons. Micah Hyde's been dealing with a neck injury the last 2 years. Jordan Poyer's been in and out of the lineup. So these are big-name guys. All of them at one point or another have been Pro Bowl, All-Pro type players. But then you get younger at all of those spots, and they've had some guys that have been emerging. Terrell Bernard at linebacker last year. Rasul Douglas comes over in a trade. Christian Benford at cornerback is a great young talent. And so this is a team still with just a tremendous amount of talent throughout the roster. And then the biggest question mark becomes, at the receiver position where you started, can they get enough production there? Because on the defense side of the football, I'm never going to be worried about a Sean McDermott defense. I'm just truly not. I mean, we've seen them plug and play in that secondary year over year when they've needed to because of injuries. They've had the number 1 pass defense in the NFL over the last 7 years, if you combine it all under Sean McDermott. So I'm not concerned about the defense at all. It just simply comes down to me. Can they get enough production at the wide receiver position? I don't think it's got to be one guy simply. It's not on Keon Coleman to come in and be a 1,000-yard receiver from the jump. We saw with the Joe Brady offense, they like to spread the ball around, and they will attack mismatches. And it wouldn't surprise me this year to see James Cook get a heavy load carrying the football and then catching it as well. Well, I'm generally a homer, and I get a lot of bills on my fantasy team each year. But I'll be eyeballing Cook early in this one.
You go back and watch some of their big games last year, Kansas City specifically, the amount of times and ways they tried to target him against that defense. No doubt a big-time weapon. And I'm with you on Sean McDermott, the play caller again on defense like he was last year. So let's go over to that offense. Last year, we know it was a tale of 2 halves of the season. In your mind, was there something different that clicked for Josh Allen specifically that he's going to take forward into this season as a quarterback that allowed them to go on that run the back half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, when you have Joe Brady step in, to me and what I've heard within the organization is it just simply became more matchup specific for each and every game as opposed to this is our playbook. These are the plays we run and we're going to go at it. And look, that's not to say Ken Dorsey was at fault in any way. It just didn't seem to mesh with what they with their production on the field. And so Joe Brady takes over. Points per game similar, but just a more efficient offense. And so, for Josh, he's been so productive. He's had so many splash plays. It's always going to be about, he had X amount of turnovers. Okay, well, I played with a lot of quarterbacks that didn't have a lot of turnovers, and we didn't win a lot of games. He's a playmaker out there on the field, and it's just it's always going to be a balancing act with him, but give me 17 back there all day.
All right, I got one quick one for you. We got under a minute to go here. Sean McDermott, who has a wrestling background, brings in Gable Steveson, the 2-time NCAA champ and the gold medal heavyweight wrestler. How difficult transition could this be for him?
It's going to be a tremendously difficult transition. I mean, this guy didn't even play high school football. Now, when you talk about a combination of size, speed, athleticism, discipline, work ethic, getting a guy like that in your locker room, an Olympic gold medalist, having him be around the guys is their value likely. Now there's 90-man rosters. You can take a flyer on a guy like a Gable Steveson. I think it's extremely unrealistic this year to say that he's going to come in and step in and make an impact. I will say this. He's going to embarrass some third-string offensive linemen in the preseason, whether it be training camp or in the games. And everybody's going to get really excited about it. But I got a text from our mutual friend, Richie Incognito, the other day, and he said, dude, if he lined up across from us, we would literally throw him out of the back of the end zone. It's just going to be a tough transition. But Sean McDermott loves him some wrestlers, and he got him one.
There's no doubt about it. Wood, you're the best, man. We could talk to you all day, brother. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the offseason, and we'll loop back in with you when we get ready to start the season. Thanks, man.
Pleasure. Anytime, guys. You know that.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic with Dan Hurley making the decision on Monday not to take the Lakers offer and head back to UConn. That means it's plan B for the Lakers. And they have been talking about, or at least rumors have been milling about them wanting to pick up Pelicans assistant James Borrego. But according to Brian Windhorst over at ESPN, he said this on Cleveland radio. Borrego was in Cleveland the last 2 days and is one of the front runners for the Cavs job, so a little competition for the Lakers if that's the direction they want to go. Here's a clip from the radio spot.
For many people in the NBA, I think they would think that the Cavs job is more attractive. Now you're going to say why? Why is that?
Yeah.
Number one, and the most important reason, is that the Cavs roster is better. The Cavs have a better team than the Lakers do. I don't know if the Cavs have a better team than the Lakers on October 1st. We can debate that. The Cavs have a better team. Secondly, the Cavs play in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference right now, the ability to compete and win at the highest level it's an easier path. And frankly, the Cavs organization might outpay the Lakers on a head coach.
GoJo, how desirable is this Cavs job over the Lakers?
Now, why is that, Brian Windhorst, that this job is so much more desirable? I mean, Dad, you guys and your fellow Clevelanders have to be beating their chests right now. The UConn Board of Tourism and Ned Lamont, the governor, were all out in full force taking their victory lap after Danny Hurley decided to spurn Los Angeles for the mean streets of Connecticut. But I'd have to imagine Cleveland rejoicing right now at the notion that you guys have anything up over Los Angeles. It's a big win for y'all.
Well, listen, the Flats are back in Cleveland. They were away for a while, but they're back. They've been back for a little while now, and that's one of the things that made downtown Cleveland so much fun, certainly when I was growing up for a while. I know it went away, but that's good to go. Look, when we look at the roster, we right after Cleveland was ousted in the playoffs, you started talking about Donovan Mitchell getting traded, Darius Garland getting traded. Now, Garland, that talk has kind of gone by the wayside. But if they don't trade away Donovan Mitchell, it is a good lineup in the scheme of how you're building an NBA lineup today, because we know what we're doing with the Lakers. You're building whatever you can for that year, for the next year or two, for LeBron James, right? And LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So it's being built a little differently, I think, than other squads around the NBA. And I get it. It's just like what you did with Tom in Tampa or Aaron and the Jets. You build around that star knowing you have limited time, where others are building for the future, a la Cleveland and Orlando with the youth on that team as well. So I understand where Wendy was coming from that point.
Yeah, I think it's a definite sign of the times. And we talked about this in the postseason, that having Kevin Durant, having Steph Curry, having LeBron James on your team is no longer worth a series win in the playoff on its own anymore. That's just not what those players and those teams in their current form were capable of. And I think the same we're seeing true now this offseason, Dad, where the prospect of getting to coach LeBron James is now no longer enough for these coaches looking around the landscape of the league and going, all right, we see the way that since Phil Jackson in Los Angeles, coaches have gotten run out of town sooner than later in the Lakers sideline. And look around at some of these other markets where we've seen coaches be allowed to go there and bake with some of these younger rosters a lot longer and pursue success with a longer timeline in mind. And at some point, a very human part of most coaching staff would look and say, all right, younger roster that I can build with for longer in a market that's not going to demand my head each and every year. Now, Donovan Mitchell, we could point out, hey, that team did a lot last year, and JB Bickerstaff still got sent out of town for apparently coaching too much, which really seems to boil down to Donovan Mitchell didn't want him around, is the sentiment we all get, and Donovan Mitchell seems to be involved in this process now as they search for the next head coach. But overall, yeah, Dad, it does check a lot of boxes that from a human standpoint for a coach in the NBA, I think would be pretty appealing.
So now you wonder what goes on with the Lakers, because you talk about Borrego, who was, now looking to be one of the Lakers guys up for the Cleveland job. So do they not even get their plan B guy? They threw everything to plan A. They didn't throw everything to plan A because this massive offer never really came to be, as far as what a massive offer would have been to make somebody really think about leaving where they were. So what happens next? Because this happens a lot more than people think. You don't get your A candidate and sometimes not your B candidate. But this was so public about massive offer, Danny Hurley going there, moving over to the Lakers. I mean, how it was talked about, what it would do, and he chose college and Connecticut over LA. And if they were to get spurned again by their next possible choice, whoever that is right now, you really got to start kind of scratching your head saying, okay, the coaches who are in the know here of what's going on with teams are seeing and looking at the Lakers saying, you know what? Not the greatest situation in the world.
Especially not in, as Brian Windhorst pointed out, the current Western Conference, where we see teams like the Dallas Mavericks, teams like the Timberwolves that are on the up and up out in that side of basketball. So it's going to be a war zone. The Denver Nuggets, a year off of winning their NBA championship, and we thought would be primed to repeat this year. So it's a tough road. It feels like one of those, like JJ Redick's not going to turn down this job, I don't think. It's a great gig that he's got in media, but we've seen so much smoke about this going back to the initial reports. I'd have to imagine, Dad, if it comes up after the NBA Finals and JJ Redick is someone who wants to get into coaching, knowing for him, he doesn't have the background of already having been on someone's bench that some of these other candidates will, that this is a job and an entry point here that would be too good to pass up.
Also, he may be the one that doesn't have choices, right? We're talking about these other guys, these other coaches having choices and seeing kind of the forest through the trees and saying, okay, it might be better here in the long run than going coaching LeBron and the Lakers, where, for JJ Redick, if he doesn't have options, then that's what you get. That's what happens in the NFL a lot as well. When NFL teams don't get their first choice, you end up getting a guy that hasn't been a head coach before and doesn't have any other options out there that wants to start his career. So, it may end up that way.
By the way, you mentioned the college aspect of it. We love our buddy Paul Hembekides over at ESPN. He's a great dude, but he had the tweet about this and combined with Jim Harbaugh's leaving for the NFL as a sign of the times for college sports. I think this whole ordeal is probably a good reminder. We don't have to do the referendum on college athletics every single time something like this pops up, especially right away. As Danny Hurley coming back now doesn't mean that college is perfect and it's saved and it's this utopia now that doesn't have some things that need help or some things that are going to change and get better and doesn't have some problems. It just means for Danny Hurley at this time, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze in this particular team, in this particular jump, as he sits with one of the true titans and modern blue bloods in the sport.
Yeah, that's what we say. It's right. College is right for him right now. And that's what happens with somebody with a choice. You now have the ability to decide what's a better situation for you, given all the factors that we've always talked about, from geography to family to money, all the things involved. You get to choose. And right now, you're right. There's a lot that college sports needs to fix. But right now, it's the best place for Danny Hurley for whatever his reasons are. I think someday he'll probably end up in the pros. We'll see. We'll see how the rest of the college career goes. But you're right. I mean, and I'm with you. As far as making the referendum, the sky is falling with every coach that leaves. And this coach didn't leave; he actually chose college over pro sports. Yeah, let's not get ahead of our skis. While college sports is going through some serious changes, they're still getting having networks pay them a ton of money to show their games. They're still getting the athletes. They're still getting the sellout crowds, and they're still getting incredible ratings.
And in Danny Hurley's case, and according to Brian Windhorst, getting lowballed a little bit by the Lakers. That's the other part of this that's fascinating as we talked and debated the sincerity of the Lakers' pursuit of Danny Hurley, was that didn't seem like the kind of contract you offer, even if it's more than what UConn is going to be able to give him in college. It didn't seem like the kind of offer that you give when you're trying to make absolutely sure, as you said, that guy doesn't walk out the building if he's really the one that you want and really the one that you're serious about. That seems like the offer you get where it's like, all right, we'd love it if it happened. We'll take a swing, but we're not going to go outside of our means for this. And now it remains to be seen from here on out for the Los Angeles Lakers. What does the pursuit look like for any of the candidates left here? Are they willing to go outside of their means, or are the Lakers kind of aware of their own limitations as a franchise and as a roster in the Western Conference as they try and do what they do best in that organization, sunset their star players in a way that celebrates them, because that franchise, amongst many other things, wants to make their stars feel loved up. Coming up next, though, we'll talk about somebody in my home state that's making Danny Hurley feel the love. Next, you're on GoJo Golic. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. If you miss us there, you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you miss that or any of our great guests, thanks to Nick Wehry, top-ranked professional eater, getting ready for the 4th of July Nathan's Hotdog eating contest without Joey Chestnut at this moment in time. Rachel Nichols, our good friend and a co-host of the Bully Ball podcast here on the DraftKings Network. And Eric Wood, former Buffalo Bills All-Pro center and one of the voices on the Bills radio network, for joining us here to talk about their team and minicamp. If you miss any of that, you can get it wherever you get your podcasts or right here as soon as we get done with the show on YouTube. And Dad, starting with this sad news from the world of basketball that we saw reported by Chris Haynes. Jerry West, the logo and Hall of Famer, passed away this morning at the age of 86. According to Chris Haynes over at NBA Insider over at TNT and Bleacher Report, he passed away with his wife Karen by his side. And so one of the certainly foremost names of the sport, Dad, but quite literally the man you see every time you look at an NBA screen, passes away as a legend and an all-time great.
Wow. I mean, there's no good thing. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, but it's a way for those who don't know a lot about Jerry West to find out about Jerry West. That's what I mean in finding out, especially the younger generation can, when they see this guy, the logo you see for the NBA has passed away, and just his accomplishments from being what I think the 2nd overall pick in 1960, NBA champion. He's a coach for the Lakers. He's an 8-time executive NBA champion, 2-time executive of the year as well. I mean, has done so much for the game of basketball, from player to coach to executive, meant so much to this league. Without question. And again, to be the logo, man. I mean, how is there any much cooler than that? I mean, when you look at a professional sports league and see a logo, that's you. I mean, absolutely incredible, his accomplishments and what he has done. 86 years old, R.I.P. Jerry West. I mean, what an incredible career that you had.
Yeah, this is certainly one of those days that turns into a lot of the reminiscing, a lot of stories that, as you mentioned, people and younger generations who maybe don't have that same understanding will certainly have there. The Clippers put out a statement and release an acknowledgement there. Is obviously Jerry West, someone very familiar with that organization, had been working with them in an executive role there, along with recently the Golden State Warriors, the Memphis Grizzlies before that. So, Jerry West is a guy I got to meet, Dad, obviously a West Virginia legend, but at training camp when I was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the New Orleans Saints at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. And one of the few people that you meet and walk away from and you realize I remember walking away and saying to you, that's the freaking logo. And there's the gravity that comes along with that. We always talk about faces of the sport, but the silhouette that has also helped define it. Jerry West, again, rest in peace, passed away at the age of 86. No easy transition, obviously, from something like that here, but we'll move along to that, Claudia, as we look and talk so much about Danny Hurley and what happened with him over this last week, turning down the Los Angeles Lakers head coaching job to stay home in Storrs, Connecticut. And it appears the fine folks in Connecticut have decided to shower him with praise and with a lot of other things because he did it.
Yeah, this is one I feel like you can connect pretty closely to, GoJo. All of us, really. We're all foodies. How would you like free wings, free pizza, free hot dogs for life? That's what Danny Hurley is getting from some Connecticut restaurants. I don't know any of the names of these. I don't know if you guys do from living out there, but pretty cool in general to get this.
No, these are all really familiar there. I mean, listen, Frank Pepe's and New England, Connecticut, Southern Connecticut, known well for the pizza. Frank Pepe's, along with Bar and a few other places, certainly the face of that. But Jay Timothy's, anyone who's ever worked at ESPN or been out to Bristol, Connecticut, there are not many places to eat right near campus in Bristol. And Jay Tim's one of the best, the big bucket of wings they turn upside down and present for the entire table. They're double fried. It's incredible. So he needs to take them up on that offer because Jay Tim's is one of our great exports in Connecticut.
There was not a bigger ESPN meeting place than Jay Tim's. I mean, that was a place when everybody was going to go out and hang out for a while. So, but to answer your question, Claudia, that's the way to some people's heart. I don't know if it's for Dan, but it would be for Mike and I. Free food, free food for like one of the first deals that Greeny and I got at ESPN was for Subway. and I asked for my pay in a card that gives me all the food I want. And I Greeny and our agent kind of laughed at me, and I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. I wanted them cards that said I can get a sub anytime I want. It didn't happen that way. I just took the money, which was okay too. But man, food, getting handed some food is one of the great things in life, without question.
We did have a Subway card that had a tremendous amount of. I only know because I ate a lot of Subway as a kid as a result of that deal. So tremendously thankful for that. But this has real for us, Dad. Titans eat free feel to it. Remember the Titans where they offer that up and then quickly realize the error of their ways. Dan Hurley, smaller guy. I don't know what kind of eater he is. I don't want to deny him that because as we see with Major League Eating, hell, Nick Wehry was on the show with us this morning. He's skinny and jacked. And yet he can go there and pack it away. So maybe Danny Hurley's the same, but he doesn't look like he is going to stress test their free wings for life deal the same way that you or I might.
What are the parameters, though? What if he comes in with a group of 10? Are they laying out wings for everybody or pizza for everybody? Does everybody get it for free? Is there any fine print in this thing? Or is it, hey, when you come in, you and your group, what if he comes in and he said, hey, wings are on me? And, the wings are free for him. Does everybody get them free? I mean, where does it end?
I think it's probably no matter what, because this is the best publicity you could have if you're a J. Tims. Obviously, it's one thing to have a bunch of ESPNers come down there and have a meeting there and have a bunch of them in the building. It's another to have Danny Hurley, who probably walks on water around that state at this point, walk in and get all that free pub from that. So, Danny Hurley, hey, listen, if we're ever back in Connecticut, obviously got a lot of fond memories in that state. Wasn't always the biggest UConn fan at all growing up, really, but I can put that aside in the name of breaking bread with a guy that's doing a lot of great things for the state that I called home for a long time. I'm just saying. Claudia, let's get to another food-related product and story that we have to finish the show off.
A story that I don't believe, guys. I'm sorry. I just simply do not believe that Tyreek Hill has never had a donut. But that's what they're saying. He posted a video of him trying a donut for the first time. And at first he says he doesn't like it. I don't think we have the audio here. He smells it, tries it, doesn't like it at first, and then it's like the aftertaste he's into. But also, who gives him that donut? You have to give him a glazed. If you're really trying a donut for the first time, you go glazed.
I don't know. I can't remember. No, I can't remember the last time I wasted my time on a glazed donut. If I'm going to eat a donut.
Are you guys serious?
Oh, Claudia, there are so many.
Oh, yeah, there's so many other fish in the sea.
That's like drinking water instead of having a beer.
No, it's Senior. Have you had a Krispy Kreme glazed donut, please?
If I had a Krispy Kreme, I've eaten a dozen in like a minute. Yes, I've had a Krispy Kreme.
He's a type 2 diabetic. He's had plenty of Krispy Kreme donuts.
No,
there are much better donuts than a glazed. A glazed donut is a waste of my time. You want a donut, Claudia? You need to go to Donut Crazy in Connecticut, where we would get our donuts there, or the donuts at Martin's right here in South Bend, the Long Johns with the cream filled, and not Boston cream filled. Cream filled. No. They're phenomenal. But Claudia, to your point, I don't believe you either. I don't believe that was his first donut ever.
Do you guys have any weird things that you haven't tried like this? Because my buddy and former teammate Dane Chris is a longtime listener of the show, has said for years he has never had a piece of gum. He is a 34-year-old man who said he has never chewed gum in his life. And just yesterday, he and I were coming home from the airport, and he told me he's never had a Dr. Pepper in his entire life. So do you guys have anything that registers on the Richter scale like that?
I've never had a Pepsi or a Dr. Pepper.
Really?
Yeah.
I have. I can't say that I've never had something that I haven't chosen not to have. I'll put it that way.
Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, I think... Yeah, it's usually how it works. Most of my dad's are vegetables, though, that he's chosen not to have. Green things that he would put on his plate. He makes an active choice to say that health is not something that lives here. At GoJo and Golic, let me know the weirdest thing that you haven't eaten in your entire adult life, because I don't know what's going to top gum and Dr. Pepper from my buddy Dane. We don't know if we're ever going to be able to top this show today. If you agree, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it. Leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. Enjoy the NBA Finals. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.